Man, I just can't get a breather, can I? There's always someone new in the map. I don't plan on fighting that guy for a while though, so let's see if he'll stay out of our way long enough for us to climb aboard the flying machine. Once again, you can see that I have new armor. I'll explain what it does a bit later, because right now I feel something very important to talk about with regards to this level is its verticality. The next few screens are just going to be me climbing upwards. It's something that, in my experience, a lot of platformers try to avoid, because suddenly the most core mechanics of the game, running around and jumping, are actively working against you. Every jump becomes extremely dangerous, because if you miss a jump, or you get hit in a compromising position, you're going to lose a ton of progress. For example, if I happen to fall off of this ladder for whatever reason, I'm not killed from the fall, but instead I'm just sent back to the previous screen. This is how verticality was handled back in Elec Man stage in Mega Man 1. If you were knocked off of the ladder, you would fall, and fall, and fall some more. It didn't feel great. Now, it's true that losing progress in general is also the case when falling in a regular old bottomless pit, but there's something frustrating about not being killed outright and instead just being set back a number of screens. Which might be why games like Castlevania would actually kill you when falling back down, but being killed for no reason, for trying to go back to an area you've already been to, might actually feel worse. Now, there's a couple factors at play with regards to why I feel that falling down a few screens is frustrating. The biggest of the two is that, since a fall in this scenario isn't fatal, the level designers are free to use these pits much more liberally. They show up multiple times a screen, set up in such a way with enemies that it's obvious they hope you do at some point end up falling into a hole. So the chances of falling into one of these is much greater than falling into an instant death pit. Secondly comes the feeling of frustration when you fail to salvage the situation. When playing a game like this, if you fall down in a hole that sets you back a screen, the player is filled with hope that they are able to use their skills to land back on solid ground before it's too late. If they don't, they feel like they failed a second time. It's failures upon failures, and it just doesn't feel good. Now, I'm not going to claim Shovel Knight is the first game to figure this out, but this is where Shovel Knight succeeds. There is always a way to save yourself. If I happen to fall down into this hole, you can see that there is nowhere but platforms and solid ground for me to land on. Now, this other hole, which is now right above us, you can see it is much more dangerous. There is a straight shot from top to bottom with a hole that we can fall into. Now, I can only vouch for myself, but if I'm starting to fall into a pit, I'm already holding any direction in an attempt to salvage the situation. So if I did fall into this pit, and I happen to be holding left in an attempt to save myself, I'm going to land on solid ground. Now instead, if I fell into this hole and my brain immediately decided to hold to the right instead, I'm going to take damage from this enemy and get bounced back to the left, again onto solid ground. The falls in this level are all designed in such a way that if you put in any good faith effort to save yourself, the chances of you actually succeeding are greatly increased. Now, I understand that was a lot of words to say. Shovel Knight does verticality good, but it is something I feel is worth appreciating. Now, since this is a stage where it takes place very high in the sky, the winds up here are volatile. We'll be seeing some variations of this a bit later, but for now the wind is just going to be constantly pushing us to the right. Okay, I've joked about a lot of things being the worst up until now, but these green fan guys are legitimately my least favorite enemies in the game. They pop up seemingly out of nowhere, they're very quick to get in a position, and they use their fans to interfere with our movement. Right now he's not so bad, but we're going to be seeing some very rudely placed ones in our future. So now that I have some downtime, I can finally explain my new armor. Sorry for the delay on that verticality discussion took a lot longer than I expected. The armor I'm wearing is the Conjurer's coat. With this armor, I take double damage, but the upside is my magic cap increases by 50, and enemies are nearly guaranteed to drop just a little bit of magic when they die. It's a very powerful armor, as there are a lot of good sub-weapons in this game, and now you can just use them constantly. But most importantly, this armor is purple, which is just incredibly classy. No, I'm not just saying that because I've played a lot of Saints Row. This level is also the level that gets the most use out of foreground objects, though if I had to pick a screen that does it the best, it would probably be this next screen coming up right here. It's true I can't exactly see where the platforms are, but the cannonball obstacle is actually sketching them out for me. I can see the first platform begins just where the foreground ends, so I know where to jump. Though I'm still capable of screwing it up, but I can at least bounce my way back up there. Likewise, I can see there's actually a decently sized platform completely hidden by this one piece of foreground. The last jump is a bit tight, but it feels very satisfying to piece everything together and figure out exactly where you need to jump in order to reach this treasure chest. It is completely optional. I could have just dropped down on the left side and skipped this room entirely, but it feels good to figure out. This pedal-powered mini airship is probably the toughest mini-boss type enemy in the game. It has almost as much health as an actual boss, and it takes up a fair amount of screen real estate. If Shovel Knight happens to be on the ground when it lands, he'll get stunned. But if you're able to avoid that or get back up in time, you can hit the bombs it throws at you back at it to really pump out the damage. While my armor is extremely powerful, I'm going to play it safe throughout this level and not destroy any of the checkpoints. I'm fairly confident in my ability to not need them, but this is not a stage where I want to replay the whole thing all over again. There's a secret in this screen that I really enjoy. You can see that on the right side of the screen here, there's kind of something there, but the first time I played through this game, the fans blocked my progress from getting there, so I didn't really think anything of it. But then you come up to this next screen and your suspicions are confirmed. These window-looking objects definitely mark a place that you can travel. So how do you get into the one down below? The fans are blocking it. Well, it's pretty simple, actually. Momentum. It's not the most powerful, but the Propeller Dagger is inarguably one of the most mechanically useful weapons in the game. With the Propeller Dagger, no gap is too far. For only 4 magic, you can extend your jumps almost twice as far as you would normally reach, and if you're high enough in the air, you can use it multiple times in a row. Anybody who is concerned about their ability to make certain jumps should definitely consider getting this weapon as soon as possible, which is easier said than done considering this is one of the last stages in the game, but my point still stands. Oh my god, I hate these fan guys so much. Well, at least it was easy to get back here and didn't destroy the checkpoint. Not that you guys had to watch me get back here, but it sure was easy on my sanity to not have to play through the whole stage again. We saw one of these guys early in the stage, but now I finally have a moment to talk about the newest mage type. There's some kind of dark green-ish? I hesitate to call them gray because the next stage will have actual gray mages. These mages are probably the worst of this mage cycle. The way their projectile works is it travels forward like any normal projectile, but then if you end up directly above or below it, it'll split off and travel vertically. It can make it a bit tough to avoid since you can't really jump over it or anything like that. On top of that, you can't reflect the projectile back at the mage because hitting it will just cause the projectile to split prematurely. We're hitting a point in the game where autoscrollers are becoming a bit more commonplace. There was that one in Treasure Knight stage, we've got this one now, and we'll have one coming up in the next level as well as one final one in one of the final stages of the game. Each of them do try to do something a little different from one another though. As I just said, Treasure Knights included the mini-boss, so it gave you something to run away from. Here we're constantly dealing with the wind. So while we need to try our best to continue towards the right side of the screen, the game is actively working against us. I mentioned before in Spectre Knight stage that I don't really like gimmicks that interfere with the core mechanics of the game, and that's still a bit true here, but at the very least, it's an interesting combination of the two. So I kinda got a lot of crap from my viewers for not really taking the time to appreciate these Propeller Rats back in King Knight stage. So here we go now. Wow! Look at those Propeller Rats. What a bunch of little cuties! Who do you think took the time to strap these tiny propellers onto these tiny rodents? What's powering these propellers? What did they hope to gain by attaching propellers to rats? Whatever their plan was, it was surely a brilliant one. I have never, and I mean never, in my time, ever seen an enemy as adorable nor as daunting as them. Do you think they're literally the cutest enemy in a video game ever created? Cast your votes if you think they're literally the cutest enemy in a video game ever created. Well, we've had wind blowing us left and right, so it's finally time for them to try winds that go up and down. This particular screen is not that bad. The winds are slow, and it's pretty obvious what you need to do. The gems kind of outline where you need to go. Now the next screen, however, we'll see. So this screen, I understand, gives a lot of people a lot of trouble, which I'm not sure I necessarily agree with. I mean, I'm not going to be the one to say, no, you shouldn't have a hard time with this thing that you're having a hard time with, but I don't feel this screen is as particularly complicated as people make it out to be. The wind is in a straightforward pattern. It goes up, and then to the right, and then up, and then right again. And you have all the time in the world to just sit at various intervals on this screen and just get a feel for it. I don't know, I don't think this screen is that difficult. Here is the final checkpoint of the level, and ahead is the boss that a lot of people would deem to be the hardest of them all. Most Shovel Knight bosses do follow a set pattern, but Propeller Knight is so aggressive it becomes really apparent. Now you might be wondering why he's not dealing any damage to me. Well, while an enemy is flashing from me dealing damage to them, they can't hurt me, so I can use this to my advantage during his attack rush to get in tons of hits. Now while he's flying around, it would be a perfect chance for me to throw some anchors at him, but this is a shovel-only fight, so there's nothing I can really do but wait for charge attacks. The cannonballs causing holes in the field is about as dangerous as Propeller Knight's spikes due to the ease falling into a hole if Propeller Knight uses wind to push you around. All in all, I would agree that for new players he is definitely the hardest boss of the Order of No Quarter, but once you really dissect his patterns, he doesn't have much else going for him.